And the walls.
Yeah, the sound quality just so much nicer than it would be in my room anyway. So I always feel bad.
Corsair does sells these panel kits now.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it's like $100 for like 6 of them, and they cover like a pretty big area.
Okay. Why don't we just start?
Yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, let's start.
Well, just start recording because we...
I already did.
Okay. Because we always need something for the cold open.
There it is. Hi, I'm John, and I'm a gamer.
Hi, John.
Gaming has come a long way over the last several decades. The debate on whether the medium is art has largely ended with a very conclusive yes, and around the world we're finally seeing people treat it with more of the respect that it deserves. With that in mind, and because I'm just as much of a game talker as I am a game player, I went around to all my gamer buddies to enlist their help in discussing games as art. So, if you love gaming as much as I do, then join us. Trust me, you're among friends. Listen in as we discuss the themes, gameplay, and whatever else comes to mind. It's like a book club, but gaming. Today's topic? Star Fox 64. Oh. Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the 4th episode of the Book Club but Gaming podcast. I'm John, your host, and with me today are Sami.
Hello.
And Adrien.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about some nerd shit. Again, this time we're going to be talking about Star Fox 64. Now, I've had a lot of childhood experience with it. I'm sure both of you grew up playing this game too. Real quick. So how do you guys feel listening to that now?
Oh, man. That really brings back memories. I don't like to go too hard into the nostalgia camp to talk about this stuff, but that's probably one of my earlier memories still. That's what I heard the first time that I actually really got to play a video game. The first one that I ever really played, and just watching it, especially with the graphics that were miles ahead of anything else that I'd seen. It's what really ignited my love of video gaming in the first place.
Yeah, for me, it really reminds me of like staying over at my friend's house because I didn't have an N64. I never had one, actually, but my friend had one, my friend Paul, and that's where the only place that I ever played Star Fox was at his house, and we would take turns, swapping between us when we would die, because we died a lot. We were pretty young and didn't really know what we were doing, as also some of our first video gaming, experiences.
Yeah,
I died a lot on this most recent playthrough, but go ahead, Adrien.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also encountered this game first at a friend's house. The N64 had just come out. I don't think Ocarina of Time had even been released at that point. And it was like, oh my god, this new gaming system. And I distinctly remember the first time I was trying to play it, jerking up on the control stick, or on the entire controller to try to go up, and then being like, no, stop, you're going to break it.
Little side note, I still do that sometimes when I'm playing. I was playing with my nephew who's like 10 years old, and I'm like playing Call of Duty with him, and I'm losing, and he's like laughing at me because I'm literally turning my controller around.
I mean, isn't that what everybody does on Mario Kart, even if you don't have like an actual wheel controller?
Yes.
But I was so into that first experience that I wouldn't shut up about it so much that my parents finally made me a deal that if I could save up $100, that they would pay for the rest and buy me the N64. And I managed to do it, saved up money, $5 from grandma here and there, until I was able to do it. And that was my first video game system.
That's hard to do as a kid.
That's so hard.
In the 90s.
Oh yeah. You're looking at like $60 and it's just like, well, I'm getting another $1 next week.
And was there any temptation to spend even just a little bit, like a piece of candy or?
No, actually.
But you made it through.
I made it through. That was one of the best moments of my life. I've got my N64. I've got Star Fox.
Yes.
Turning it on my parents' old ass CRT.
I'm a bit more spoiled. My dad just bought the system. I think he wanted something for us to be able to do together on the weekends that I was over at his place. And I remember looking at the box of Star Fox 64, and I had never played the one on the Super Nintendo up to that point. And to me, I was just like, what's this? And he goes, oh, it's planes and jet fighters, and it's going to be super cool. And I remember plugging it in and just being blown away by the first level, Corneria, like the level of atmosphere that level has, which I want to get into here in a minute. But just there's so much about it. That opening theme, like definitely to me just screams adventure, but like a fun space adventure. Like not too serious, like. Definitely, like you have the sock puppets for the characters.
For the characters and everything, yeah. So with that, do we want to just start talking about, start getting through some of our questions?
I actually have one quick note that I wanted to make because we were just listening to the intro music, and when it starts playing that dun dun dun, it could have gone two ways. It could have gone Star Fox or it could have gone Pokemon.
Oh yeah.
And, especially since we talked about Pokemon a few weeks ago, I was just like, wait a minute. Which direction is this going to go?
Where's this going to go?
Yeah. So it's very similar, I think. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was the same composer, but...
Maybe. I didn't actually look into that. But, no, yeah, definitely has that same sense. I think both do a really good job of setting you up for the feeling of adventure, and then they take it in different directions for a different kind of adventure. And it just proves the point of how important the composer is for a game, like a game that's going to stand the test of time. Because, I've heard some games before where it's like, yeah, this game could have been really good and memorable, but I can't remember the soundtrack, at all. I can remember almost every song from Star Fox.
Yeah.
As well as all the sound bites. I remember how the lasers sound, the twin lasers, the hyper lasers. It's all very iconic to me, and it stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Oh, to that point, so Sami, I lent you my 3DS to play the 3DS version of it. How did you feel about that?
I didn't really get to play it much. I ended up sort of having time to watch a playthrough, but it's a very different experience not using that N64 controller, which I think is great. The N64 controller, as interesting as it was, and as much as it influenced what came after, was not a great controller.
That's true. Did you ever get a chance to play the 3DS version of it?
I haven't played the 3DS version of it, unfortunately. I've played it, obviously the original a lot. I've played it on emulator, but that's about it. I haven't played that particular one. What's different in the remakes?
I guess the biggest difference is that they have a gyroscopic aiming control, so you could turn your ship in one direction and then aim it in another if you really wanted to. But you'd have to be pretty good. It's pretty finicky. It's the 3DS, and then I have the original 3DS, which is not the peak performance of it.
Those gyroscopes are not great in the original ones.
The other thing is, I feel like they had to change some things about the ratios. For the Nintendo 64 version, a lot of the times, everything you need to see at once is on the screen. The 3DS camera kind of moves along with your ship to make up for the fact that it's a much smaller screen. And so you're not seeing everything at once, I don't feel like. Yeah. I definitely noticed a difference because I think I mentioned this to you guys. We were going to record on Sunday, but as of right now, it is Thursday, October 28th, and the Nintendo 64 package has been out on the Switch online for a little while. I've been playing Star Fox on that, and it is so much better. I don't think the graphics upgrade is worth it at all. I think that the controls are so much smoother, especially on the Joy-Cons for the Switch. I think that's the ultimate way to play it right now.
Yeah. I think, let's just kind of jump into this. I think our, with the graphics and with the controls. So Star Fox 64 obviously is a sequel. And to the original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. And, I've played the original one just a little bit on emulator, and it's a confusing game. It's very much ahead of its time. It doesn't really make sense on the Super Nintendo. The controls are very difficult to use. The graphics are horrible. And I almost feel like Star Fox really was, the right game to be built specifically on the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, I think I remember, that they did some really interesting hacky things to get Star Fox to work at all on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like they did some crazy stuff that wasn't the console wasn't intended to do at all.
Exactly.
In order to make it happen.
They had a specific chip that got put into the cartridges for the Super Nintendo game.
For like processing the game and not just containing
the data
it.
or whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There were, and I think it was extra expensive because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And God help the emulator writers these days. Who are like, what the hell was this hardware?
God bless the emulator writers these days.
But for Star Fox 64, I feel like there was the vision that they originally tried to cram into the Super Nintendo, and then it was like, now we can actually do it. And spoiler alert, I've read like the interviews with Shigeru Miyamoto and stuff, so we know a little bit that basically was the case.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, I feel like the graphics don't really need to be upgraded. It's one of those games where it's like, yeah, some of the textures are a little wonky, but like the game's visual design is kind of built around everything being a little bit blocky, and that's just sort of what it is. The controls, the Nintendo 64's controls are basically perfect for it. You have a control stick, which you desperately need in that sort of
three-dimensional
environment.
That moves smoothly, I think, is the other thing.
Yeah. And you've got exactly the right number of buttons.
I will say, though, I think that the one control stick works well as long as you're in any of the levels that are, like, linear, right? Where you're moving forward. Mm-hmm. But it really doesn't work very well in any of the ones where it's, like, a circular arena and you're trying to fight, like, there's several of these, right?
The all-range mode.
Exactly. Terrible.
Terrible.
I hate those parts.
A dual stick would have been very helpful.
It would have been so much better to have a dual stick, or maybe they could have done something else with like the controls to make it a little bit more useful or like doable. But
I think something that really stands out to me about all range mode is that they very carefully constrain what you can see and how you can move. You can't. It's really kind of two-dimensional with a bit of extra with some height in there. You can't fly around like you could in a normal flight sim. Mm-hmm. They very carefully constrained it to try to deal with these issues, but it's still very difficult.
And I think it's probably just an artifact of the fact that it is one of the first games to try to do anything like that. Mm-hmm. So it's understandable. It's just looking back now, we can look at it and go, man, those controls were not great.
Right. If I boot up 8 Combat 7 and I want to look over to my left, I just do it. You have the other stick and it's just like, oh, that's what's going on.
That's what's over there, yeah. I think that twin sticks would be a good change, and then in place of having the face buttons be for shooting and brakes, you could have maybe the left shoulder buttons, because now all systems have 2 left shoulder buttons, be the brakes and the acceleration, and then the right shoulder buttons be bombs and just regular laser shots.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most optimal way to do it.
Also, the fact that you had to like tap the A button to fire,
could be kind of hard. But I mean, we've seen people, like, we were watching that high score playthrough a little while ago, where it's just like that guy is trained for this, like button mashing. I wonder how many controllers you go through that way, though.
Probably a lot.
Yeah. Those N64 controllers weren't really meant to last either.
Okay.
Not to that kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you could, but I mean, like, when you start playing games like Star Fox 64 or Mario Party, we're having to do a bunch of really crazy button mashing.
Well, I think the problem with Mario Party isn't so much the game as it is the rage that happens as a result of that game.
Well, no, also you could break the control stick.
That's true.
Specifically. There's a reason that modern control sticks have this kind of spherical shape that fits over another sphere.
And they're much shorter.
They're much shorter, while the N64 was basically this pin in a hole that would go eventually. It was much worse for the stick drift and everything.
Speaking of the raging, though, were there any parts of this game, either as a kid or in your most recent attempts, that really stood out to you as just like, why the fuck is this so hard? Like, this shouldn't be this hard. I'm an adult now.
When I was a kid, especially starting this game, everything was hard. Like, Star Fox, like, I was really learning how to play the game, and especially, like,
how to move in a 3D space like that.
In a 3D space, how to line up your shots properly.
Especially with no reticle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I always turned it off as soon as I learned how. Like,
I kept it on mostly.
You kept it on? Yeah.
Another thing I had a lot of trouble with was just, like, crashing into stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like, nowadays, now that I've spent 20 years learning how not to run into things, in Star Fox 64, it's not a problem. But at the time, I mean, trying to do like Meteo, I mean, I think I died constantly there just running into asteroids.
Yeah. I think that there were definitely some times where I felt like I was being juggled by the level. Like,
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You get bashed this way, then bashed that way. Yeah.
Can't win. Now my wing's broken and I lost my hyper lasers. Fuck.
Yeah, or even if you there are a lot of places where you have to like pick left or right, and you pick, but you feel like you're still going to run into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like maybe a fifth of the screen that you can be in and be safe.
And you have to be like prepared for that part of the level,
right?
Or else you're going to hit it.
Yeah.
There were definitely a couple of those. There was the one on the, I forgot what space level that was. Maybe Sector Z or Sector Y.
There's one in Sector Y where you have to go up and
down.
There's a couple of areas.
And then Venom, if you take the low route, there's two parts where you could either follow Falco or follow Peppy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slippy's not an option for reasons.
I thought there was one point where it was like a 3-way.
Really? I can't remember. I just played through that level and I don't remember that, but I'm maybe
it's been a while since I did that version of Venom though. So.
Yeah. I think that when I was fighting Andros on the high route and fighting the brain, it was much harder than I expected it to be. I was I
really tough.
Knew I had a hard time with it when I was a kid, but like, god damn, the game does not prepare you for that at all. Like,
no, the fast teleporting thing is total bullshit.
What the hell? As soon as I get my shot lined up, I'm about to take a shot.
Yeah.
There were some pretty cool touches with the way the brain matter would kind of like start to spread across the stage, though.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings up a good question, good quick question to start with. How well do you think the game teaches you how to play itself?
I mean, the controls are pretty simple, right? The gameplay is fairly straightforward, and it does, when you're even in the boss fights, like your targets are very obvious for the most part. On the other hand, I think there's a difference between how well it teaches you how to play the game and how well difficulty ramps up.
Yeah.
And this is, not a problem unique to this game, and especially not to games in this era, right? Like a lot of games up until probably the early 2000s started off at an acceptable level, but then they got hard real fast.
Yeah. Without
being known for that, or like that being a thing. Right. Nowadays we have things like Dark Souls or whatever.
Where the difficulty is like part of
you go in expecting it to be really hard, and that's part of the like goal of the game.
Yeah.
Whereas back then it was just like a lot of games just were really hard because often they were short, and by making it hard, you could add more content for players because it took them longer to beat it. Yeah. Not because the game had a lot of content, but because it was really hard to get through it.
Yeah, and I mean, if we, to talk more about just like, does the game teach you how to play? We definitely see some of the early, like if you look at just how Corneria starts, it's very carefully crafted to kind of suggest to the player how they're supposed to play the game.
That's true, yeah. And it has pretty good explicit command or like, suggestions by the other characters telling you what to do in order to survive.
Do a barrel roll and take care of the guys behind me, Fox. And that kind of leads me to, I really love the fact that right away you have the option to split paths. And that really teaches you a lot of things too, because in order to take the high route, you need to both save Falco and then fly through all the little ground, what do you call them, archways?
Yeah, the archways.
Archways. So you have to demonstrate your combat prowess and you have to demonstrate your flying prowess, and that's what unlocks the other side of the waterfall. By the way, I think in the first episode, Adrien, you said that at this point there's no satisfying answer to what's behind the waterfall. But I think a whole other part of the level and the other side of the game is a pretty satisfying one.
Yeah, that's a pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
Good callback.
But like, so you have to do that, and then if you do that, you don't get the all range mode at the end. But the game kind of expects that you would have gone through the low path first.
Yeah.
And that means that if you do it that way, and this is your first time playing the game, at the end of the level, you also get to do the all range mode in probably the easiest all range mode environment. You have a walking enemy; it's very easy to keep track of. It doesn't teleport.
Yeah.
So I think in that way, the game does a pretty good job of teaching you how to play itself. I think the fact that it's just ball-bustingly hard is its own problem, though.
Yeah. And just like the very beginning of the level, it's like it sends one enemy at you. It's right in your crosshairs, even if you don't move around.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's water, so you can't crash into anything. And then it sends 2 enemies at you. And then it sends 3, and it's like, hey, lock-on is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, there's also ground. Don't crash into that. And like it very, very slowly, just over the course of maybe 20 or 30 seconds, introduces you to basically all of the mechanics of the game.
And then even before the ground and the walls, Slippy comes through and has people chasing him, and suddenly you have to shoot them down. So it teaches you, okay, you're going to have to watch your team, take care of them, and
help
take
your
care of
useless teammates.
They do and then they do things for you later on too, only if you take care of them. So,
yeah.
And did you have anything?
I don't know. I just don't feel like the teammates are that useful. I mean, they help you, but it's scripted events and right. So like it makes sense, but it's also one of those things where it's like a lot of the time you're like, I have to help you again.
Like, Slippy especially. Like I was trying to be more forgiving this time as an adult and understanding, but God damn it, you stupid frog. There were some times when I was playing the game in the break room at work, and like I had other people in there around me, but I'm playing it on my Switch, and suddenly I'm like trying to save Slippy. She's like, take care of the guys behind me, I can't shake them. And I start shooting them, and he moves right in my path of fire, and hey, what's the big idea? I'm like, I'm trying to help you, you stupid frog. Like, I feel crazy. That brings me to probably the first question that I thought of when we started planning this episode. What do you think of Star Fox as a team? Are their dynamics, scripted or otherwise, interesting, and are they believable as a functional unit? Why or why not?
Not particularly.
I agree.
I feel like a lot of people become attached to them just because they are there throughout the game, and you have to save their asses. But they don't seem like a particularly functional group.
No, because you've got, you have Slippy, who's useless, Falco, who is kind of a douchebag,
yes,
and then and then Peppy, who's I guess kind of a dad figure, but like he also then brings your dad's son into danger constantly, and he's like, this is a good idea.
I want to save my best friend. I'm gonna get his son involved.
Yeah.
I would say that, I think out of all of them, Peppy is the only one that I believe to be a functional member of the unit. I guess Fox maybe, but I don't understand why Fox is the leader of that group. I think that Peppy should be the leader.
He doesn't really say much. He doesn't really do... It seems
he doesn't give commands.
He's just a really good fighter pilot.
If anything, everyone else is giving him commands, like the entire
game.
So.
Also, why is Slippy the only one that can do the scanning their shield thing?
Because she needed some reason to be useful.
Yeah, to
exist, to justify his existence. And I always misgender Slippy on accident because of the voice. That's not on purpose, but
Slippy is male, right?
Yeah, he is male.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking.
No, definitely. And then Falco, I don't understand how many times I have to prove myself to this guy.
Exactly. I think there is it's reasonable to have a character who is that sort of standoffish whatever guy. Mm-hmm. Reasonable, right? But they need to kind of go through some kind of transformation in a reasonable amount of time, and we don't get that.
I mean, I think the Star Fox unit is they're an action movie cast, basically. They undergo very little character development. They're all kind of stereotypes of kind of action movie cliches, and honestly, I think it works in the context of the game for the most part. I don't think everybody is the most believable, and I think they could probably shout at you a little bit less.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is just they're annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah, you just get annoyed at your teammates, and that's not a good reaction to ever have to your teammates in a game. But also, to be fair, that's also a very normal reaction to your teammates in any game with, teammates that are AI controlled, all the way up until, even now, but really there wasn't any good option, examples of a teammate that didn't absolutely suck until I think Half-Life 2.
Yeah, that's true.
So, fair enough.
Fair enough, but that's mechanically. We're talking about personality-wise,
Yeah, but there's a part of what is annoying about them is them needing to be saved all the time, right?
That's true.
And again, it's not really until you get to 2004 that you get any sort of secondary characters that in an action type game, right? Like RPGs are different, but in an action type game that aren't incredibly annoying to try to keep alive.
That's a great point, and especially now that I'm thinking back, there's no time where they take care of somebody on your ass. Like, they might tell you to do a barrel roll or to do a somersault or a front flip or whatever, but they don't actually shoot the guy who's on your ass. Like, we'll save us.
They do occasionally help you out if they are alive. They'll like shoot a difficult enemy or help you clear a path or things, but it's fairly minor.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
And I think there are also those moments that just pass so quickly, and you at least as an adult, you also realize very, very fast that they're scripted, events, and they're not like, sort of spontaneous things where they're constantly trying to do this.
There's no AI there.
No, which again, and it's the N64. It's not really expectable that there is, but
yeah.
Again, looking back at it from our vision at this point, it's kind of limiting.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Star Fox team are not the only characters that show up as teammates, so to speak, or allies at the very least. There are also 2 other characters that can kind of show up if you do play your cards right.
Right.
There's Bill and there's Kat. Kat, I think, is the only female character in the entire game.
Yeah.
Which we could talk about in a second. But
I think
Bill...
there's one on the Star Wolf team as well.
I don't think so. I remember looking at them. No, they're all guys.
Oh, they're all guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Pig was a woman.
No.
Maybe I'm misgendering again.
No, I think he was the one who betrayed your dad.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I remember.
He's the one who betrayed your dad, and then there's Andross's nephew, who's a little shit. And then there's Starwolf, and then there's Leon.
Right. Okay, yeah. So Kat is the only female character in the entire game. Well, I mean, it is worth noting that like Kat being the only female character does have a bit of that like saunter,
right,
very flirty
sex appeal.
Yeah,
she's very flirty. That's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they just had to have the one girl, and she had to be super flirty.
Yeah,
which I mean, they probably wouldn't do that in 2021.
Probably not.
Yeah,
you'd hope not.
It's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, there are other girls in the Star Fox franchise now, but they weren't introduced in much, much better ways either.
No, no, certainly not Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Crystal, yeah.
Oh man.
Sorry, what game?
Star Fox Adventures?
We don't talk about.
Oh yeah,
that's like the Zelda CDIs. We just...
No such game exists, Sami.
It looks like nothing to me.
I hate to admit, but I actually kind of had a good time with that game.
I enjoy it as more of a Zelda type game.
Yeah, no, it's not a Star Fox game.
The actual Star Foxy's jet sequences were super lacking.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
they were barely there, so
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you think of? I'm sorry, Adrien. Did you have?
Oh no, I was just going to bring things back. So
yeah.
What did you guys think of having those characters be sort of like an unlockable little side, just kind of a treat that happens for a level or two, depending.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you can go to a specific level, and if you specifically like get the good end for that level, then they'll help you out later. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of the game, they'll actually join you going back to Corneria.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get a little extra dialogue with them. And if memory serves, I think I did this once, you can actually get both of them.
Can you? I tried to, and I just failed to this time. But
yeah, I think I might be misremembering, but I think you can get all the way from Bill's planet over to Zonus, but maybe I might be making that up.
Maybe. Now I'll have something.
Actually, can we pull up the map?
Yeah.
Since I think we're going to talk a lot about levels and how they connect.
Between the two characters, which would be your favorite?
I think Bill is my favorite. He's just kind of a dependable guy. Doesn't try to flirt with Falco and Fox.
Yeah. Start some more trouble than what's already there.
Isn't a problematic character.
Right.
Yes, that is that. And yeah, he actually has a personality that's not just the girl. Like,
yeah.
Again, that points to that being such a problem. Like,
yeah. And I mean, I think like Bill as well is, he's pretty helpful. You come in, and I think this is part of it. You come in and you save him. Mm-hmm. He's not just like somebody who's futzing around his level. Like, this is his base. He's defending it from Andross. You come in, you give him a hand. He commands his own wings of Cornerian fighters and everything. Seems like a dependable guy.
He's an actual leader.
Yes.
I wonder if Fox should look up to him. Yeah, I like that. And then you help him, he helps you back.
Exactly.
It's not just he shows up because he happened to be around.
Yeah.
Like, so that there's that dependability, as you put it, there, and that definitely adds a lot of character to him.
Yeah, and I mean, Kat does also show up to help, but she's like really tsundere about it. Like, I don't really want to help you, but I guess.
That's true. She helps with the missiles.
Yeah, I think she'll help with the switches at Macbeth as well.
Oh, she will? Depending on which path you end up taking?
Yeah, she'll shoot all the ones on the left.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Well, that brings me to... Actually, do you, either of you have a question that you want to go into next?
No, let's just head up the next one.
All right, let's see here. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
What is the tone of the game, and how does it accomplish... Or how does it express this tone?
Sami?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a lighthearted game, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's really bad stuff happening, and I feel like also that intro is very heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
But then the actual gameplay and the way that the characters interact with each other, for the most part, it is kind of that 80s action movie feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
100% agree. I think there's that 80s action feel, not just in the way that, like, the lines are delivered and in the way that you're just like mowing down just like armies of people, animals, robots, I don't know.
There's got to be something pilot each one of those ships, right?
But also the game is very like cinematographic. You know, at the end of every level there's, you know, this big outro sequence with like the rising music and everybody flying in formation. You know, all the bosses have just like these super over the top line deliveries.
Oh,
like
yeah.
my dad still quotes the I think it's one of the bosses. I think it's the boss from like the alternative boss in Corneria where he just goes, "My Emperor, I failed you."
And
then everything blows up. Like literally 20 years later, he's still quoting that.
I definitely feel like the game has like a space punk kind of vibe, where it's just like things are kind of crazy in space, but we're okay with it. Like you have this like wisecracking crew of 4, as you say, just mowing through everything. And it kind of makes it does raise a question: is like how are these 4 just mowing through everything? Like, has Andros not considered like putting just a little bit more money into each individual ship, maybe cutting them down by 1 or 2, because you really have some enemies, I'm using air quotes here, that are just kind of standing there. Like
there's a lot of enemies that represent significant investments. You know, with like Sector Y or Area 6, you know, you have all these, you know, giant Androssian like space warships, you know, cruisers or something that die from a couple of shots from your R-Wing.
Yeah.
Like, you start to think it's like, surely this
some kind of technological like imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Surely this represents a serious investment in like, couldn't this money have gone towards like, because Andros, like, he's hired the Star Wolf team. They have ships that are ostensibly as good as yours. They can do some of the things that yours can.
Better by the end. They have the force fields.
Yeah, they've got the force fields and everything. But it's like the armies clearly aren't really cutting it against the R-Wings.
No.
Now, do you guys think that Star Fox and Star Wolf are part of the respective armies that they're working for, or do they feel more like mercenary groups?
Both are mercenaries.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's actually fairly well established in the wider
in the lore.
Yeah,
Okay.
wider lore is that they are mercenary groups.
Yeah.
It's just that Star Fox's group has a bit more of morals.
Ethics.
It's like, do you really want to think it's like, before this mission, like, what were they doing? Did they work for Andros at some point?
Good question.
Yeah, that's true. And then what was like Star Wolf up to? Like, what is their whole motivation? We know that Andros's nephew is in there, and that's probably how, I think that nepotism is how they funded the new ships.
Probably.
But like, what was Wolf's whole motivation? Is that he has some kind of grudge against Fox, which we never
totally.
find out about.
They're like total rivals.
We never know what that's about. Like,
Nope.
They just
no, but
are.
your action movie hero has to have like the rival that's like kind of cool and
that like super edgy rival.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like everything about Star Fox is the way it is because that's what 80s action movie expects it to be.
Mhm.
You know, that's why it's almost entirely male and the only female is a chick. It's just like that's the formula for these movies, and they just leaned into it really hard.
Yeah.
To a point of parody.
Yes.
I think for sure. I mean, a lot of the stages themselves are parodies of other movies. The stage where you meet Bill, Katina, is a parody of Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got like a couple of Star Wars like Death Star trench runs too, and including the first Death Star and the second Death Star flying into it.
Yeah.
The game is it's just having fun with all of it, all the tropes. And then the fact that the R-Wing, I always wondered if that was like a take on the X-Wing from Star Wars.
Oh, pretty clearly, I think, especially with the way that it like deploys wings or whatever.
Yeah. And then, but the one thing holding me back as a kid from thinking that is like, well, it's not shaped as an R. But then I found out later that the R-Wing in Super Nintendo games was named that way because it was basically an A. Like that's as close as they could get to representing a plane that would move around on the Super Nintendo, was just to put that A shape in there. And they didn't want to call it an A-wing, so they called it an AR-wing. So yeah, that confirmed it. The whole game is just having so much fun with itself.
Pretty sure Macbeth is also a reference to some movie because it's got like the train and everything.
Oh, that's true. Like Speed or something?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, it's the name itself is a reference to Shakespeare. So.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I mean...
And in terms of those references, I mentioned to you guys about the comparisons to the Thunderbirds, that old TV show, and how Shigeru Miyamoto was definitely encouraged by that and inspired by it. And he said so in interviews too, where like that's the reason why we have the kind of sock puppety character boxes, is to kind of reference that. Did you guys get a chance to take a look at those clips?
Did somebody say Thunderbirds?
Thunderbirds!
Thunderbirds!
Hello!
Hey there!
McKenna!
How's it going, everyone? I'm making a cameo. So I heard Thunderbirds.
Yes.
I grew up watching the Thunderbirds.
Okay.
My father had excellent taste in media to show children.
Okay.
But yeah, it's essentially done with marionettes. It's a team of rescue people who go around and they like solve mysteries. They stop super spies from like breaking into things and like this. Well, essentially, Thunderbirds, they're a rescue team. They go into various sorts of situations. They have these machines, lots of ships that will help them sort of like figure out like when the next natural disaster is going to come in. And it's all done through marionette puppetry. Great series if you ever want to check it out. I believe that there are DVDs available, and also, if you look hard enough, you can find it for free on YouTube. Anyway, I'm gonna pop out. Whee!
Thank you, McKenna, for that little trivia there, because that definitely leads into, I think, even just from her description, I get a Star Foxy vibe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we know that Shigeru Miyamoto was thinking about the Thunderbirds when he created this, and I think it goes past just the animation, which also had the benefit of being a lot easier on the N64's hardware. You have 4 frames or whatever.
Right.
Just kind of bounce around instead of needing to animate that. But, the whole idea of, you've got like the Great Fox Mothership, you've got the R-Wing, you've got some of those like the extra versions of it that can go in different places. I think a lot of this does harken back to Thunderbirds and some of the things that it established with how it sets up its team and how they all have their sort of vehicles and such. It's not a strict parallel, but there's a lot of inspiration there, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really enjoyed the vibe that he pulled from that show and put into his game. And that's something that, this is the second Shigeru Miyamoto game that we've covered here, the first being the Ocarina of Time. And it's so interesting to me to see just the range that guy has in imagination and like the different kinds of games that he could come up with. Like, the first one was an adventure game. You run around with a sword, solving puzzles and fighting. This one's a playing game. Like, it'd be almost like, I feel like to draw a comparison to another creator of a different genre, it would be Quentin Tarantino. It's like he could do a Western, he could do a spy thriller, he could do a gangster heist film, but they're all going to feel like a Tarantino movie. It's just going to be different genres.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that this game in particular was made by Miyamoto, because at the time, Nintendo was really trying to make games that would show off its new hardware. This was supposed to be a victory lap for Nintendo. They won the console wars. They created a game system that, despite its foibles, was the most capable at the time. They had a completely new way of doing controls, and they really wanted to showcase it. And they had, basically their best game director on it. And, Star Fox is there with the other first-party games that Nintendo made that were really trying to showcase its capabilities. And here, all of them stand out in having just phenomenal controls, just really, really tight, really, really well put together, but also solid theming, good graphics at the time, for whatever value you want to say for good graphics. But not only was Miyamoto very he had a wide breadth in what he could make, he was being put on the projects that Nintendo wanted to showcase their premium new game console.
He really did carry that.
Yes.
They were like, hey, Miyamoto, we got a new console. Enter all range mode. Just go at it all from all directions.
Yeah, I think there's a reason that the most memorable games from that era were made by him, or directed by him.
I think so, too. That actually is a good segue into this next question. What sorts of things does the game have to say about duty and legacy?
I can go first.
Go for it.
So, I think the game has a pretty straightforward through line here. There's a very clear Fox is succeeding his father. It does seem like he's trying to do it because he's following in his father's footsteps. He has his father's old comrade. He's fighting against, his rivals are a team that has the person that betrayed his father. And when he succeeds and he's in his direst hour after he defeats Andros and everything is exploding, his father comes back just to lead him, just to lead him out. You get that little glimmer of a little bit of characterization there.
Right.
Like, James is saying things that Peppy always tells you, and it's because Peppy picked up those things. This sort of like, Fox has kind of completed his journey and gets that little glimpse of the father that he's been chasing this whole time. To lead him to safety. Apart from that, I'm not sure that the game or the story has a whole lot to say about duty, apart from the fact that everybody kind of seems to be doing... They're all pretty well locked in their loyalties.
Right, we're going to fight these guys. But it doesn't really go into any depth about why.
Yeah, and it doesn't really play around with it.
Which, again, is kind of in character or in theme for that 80s movie, 80s action movie style, right? Of here's the bad guys, here's the good guys. They're going to fight.
Because that's what they do.
Exactly.
Right. It's like, is Andros really just a stand-in for the USSR? Kinda.
A little bit.
The Red Menace.
And I think about, I really love getting back into just when you do meet the dad, when you do meet Fox Senior, what's his name?
James
Mcleod, right? And you learn that it kind of makes certain things about Peppy's personality make a little bit more sense. And I really like the way that when Peppy says it, he says it like someone who was told that. When James says it at the end of the game, he says it like someone who came up with it and has been saying it his entire life. He's got this cool... He's wearing shades.
Yeah.
Your dad wears shades when he's flying because he's the coolest.
So, quick question. What kind of dad is going to name their son after the species that they are?
Well, my dad wanted to name me human.
We know that, Fox's dad is named James.
Like a normal name.
Like a normal name. All the other ones have names. I mean, Falco is, kinda, Falcon, right? But it's not Falcon, it's just Falco.
Yep.
But then you've got Fox.
Fox. Just Fox.
And if I could interject again, another cameo! Anyway, so James Mcleod was actually originally an F-Zero character.
Was he?
Yeah, he was originally an F-Zero character. They have since updated his design to look like a fox.
Oh my god, we'll have to put links in the description of this episode.
100%.
What was James getting up to?
I mean, now that you mention it, like, again, from what we find out about him at the end of the game, it does make sense that he would be the kind of person who'd be doing, like, racing on the side.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, in later games, installments in the series, you find out that, at least in one continuum, Falco ends up being kind of an F-Zero racer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to see that kind of...
The games are kind of adjacent, even if their stories don't quite overlap.
I could see them taking place in the same universe.
True.
And maybe, like, James is, like... I don't know if... I haven't played a whole lot of F-Zero, so maybe...
Yeah.
I don't know if F-Zero all takes place on one planet. Maybe James is, like, just secretly...
I think it happens in a few.
Okay. Yeah, I could see them taking place in the same, like, meta-universe, at least.
The same kind of wacky 80s space universe.
What do you guys think is the effect that the multiple pathways has on this telling of this overall story?
I really enjoy the fact that you can get a different story each time you play it, especially the fact that they kind of fold back in on each other depending on how you play. So you could play the game like 6 or 7 different ways and see, like...
I think there's probably more than that.
Probably more, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of paths across the Lilat system.
There's the warp zones, too. I completely forgot about the warp zones.
Yep.
Like...
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really awesome, because the scope of the story is so simple, the game is very good about story consistency.
Right.
So, for example, if you go through the easy story and you shoot down the Starwolf team hang on, let me look up the name of this darn system. If you shoot them down in Thachina, then when you go to Bolsay and duel them again, they're all like, or no, they don't show up in Bolsay.
Oh.
But if you go all the way across the system and get to Venom on the other side, they do show up and they're all flippin' cyborgs.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's a really good example, like an early example of a game with those kinds of branching pathways that still tie in together really well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously we've seen a lot more of that since then, but...
Yes. But, yeah.
It was certainly my first experience with that kind of storytelling.
Yeah, and it's pretty subtle that they don't, like... It's not like a game like Mass Effect where they're like, your choices matter. It's just like, yeah, if you interact with this character in a certain way, it'll come back and you'll see it again.
And because it is such a short game, it's like it's more encouraging to go back and do that. Whereas Mass Effect, like if I want to go and play this, or something like Persona, if I want to go and try and see a different pathway in any way, it's going to be another 80-hour commitment.
Right.
Like,
yeah, Star Fox, it's like, 30 minutes, an hour, let's try playing in a different way.
And you can actually go from Fushima and then end up on the high route.
Yep.
And then so you could potentially shoot them down in Fushima and then end up in Venom and seeing them as a cyborg, and then that makes sense in its own way.
Yep.
Which is nice. And then there are other levels that kind of directly lead into each other. Definitely Sector X, if you do the low route. Actually, Sector X, I think, is the only one that splits in 3 directions. And for a certain route, Slippy gets knocked down, and that's your entire new mission is to save Slippy, of course. But,
again.
And then that one's actually, Titania is one of my favorite levels. Yeah. Then going from there, we had talked about just the different pathways. We've talked about the fact that there are different ships. We haven't really gotten into that. But I do like the idea that there are only 2 Landmasters levels. And that, let me see here. You can't do both of them.
Nope.
No, you can do one or the other.
Yep.
But I feel like the game kind of expects you to do one before the other. In my opinion, Titania is just a little bit easier than Macbeth. Like, they expect you to, and again, they're expecting you to take the low route for your first time through.
Yeah, so I actually disagree there. I think Titania is a little bit harder than Macbeth.
You think so?
Maybe it's just because it's the level that I'm more familiar with. There are a lot of routes that take you to Macbeth.
That's true.
So once you kind of get used to it, I will agree that if you don't shoot switches, the boss is actually pretty challenging for Macbeth. It's like, that's a pretty tough boss.
I think I always had a hard time hitting those switches, and that's probably why, especially as a kid. Yeah, like. What about you, Sami?
I think I remember, because I don't think I really played through much of the Landmaster levels this time, but I just remember Macbeth and those switches, and basically feeling like if I didn't hit the switches, that there wasn't even any point in trying to get to the end. Like you just did it wrong. It wasn't even necessarily that you wouldn't win. It was just that, oh, you didn't hit them. Okay, well, you did the level wrong. So
that's true.
But I also, I think because there's only the 2 levels with the Landmaster, I probably only actually saw it when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure I only saw Macbeth. I don't think I saw the other level at all. And to be fair, I think we only beat the game when I was there once or twice the entire time that I played it. So
yeah, I think part of it as well is that Sector X is a really hard level. It's on the easy route, but it is a tough level. And I think because of that, you don't get to Titania very much.
Yeah.
And then going back to that point about like when you play the level, you beat it one way, you win. You beat it the other way, you fail. Like you still beat the level, you're still progressing in the story. I think that kind of ties into the question too of sort of like the game doesn't just stop when you fail the main objective. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna keep playing it, you kind of have to sort of live with that failure and progress. Like in Sector Z, if Gray Fox takes damage, Gray Fox is damaged the rest of the game.
Yep,
you see it every time. And
you can't punch through Area 6. You have to go around.
Mm-hmm. You have to go all the way down to Bolsay, which you've been avoiding that entire time.
Right.
Pretty much. And I like that you can go from Sector X to Sector Z and then back down to Bolsay. Like, you got the super great victory, but then... Or not even victory, because you have to do the warp zone to get from Sector X to Sector Z.
Yeah.
Which is cool in its own way. What do you guys think of the warp zones? Like, they're always so hard to get to. But I've always felt so rewarded by them.
I mean, there's only 2 areas that do it. There's the one in Meteo that just takes you to the end of the level. And then there's the one in Sector X. I think I've only done the Sector X warp like once, maybe twice. It's really tough to do.
Because you have to shoot down the gates.
Yeah.
And that's even on this I'm an adult now. I'm like, why is this so hard? I'm an adult now, but I'm trying to shoot down these gates and it's just not going for me.
I think part of it is just you're kind of fighting the game.
That's true.
You're not really. It's not necessarily the intended difficulty of like the game design, but rather just the limitations of the game engine.
All the button mashing.
Yeah.
And how much of it the game can handle.
And also just the way that it handles 3D. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
It's okay, and especially great for the time.
Yeah, it's fantastic for the time.
But
it does really help if you have, for example, Bill and your entire team, because they will help you shoot the gates.
Oh, that's right. But only after you've gotten the first one or 2.
Yeah.
And I had trouble with the first one. Like,
yeah, you can bomb them, which helps. But yeah, it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
It's definitely a challenging warp to get through. The one in Meteo, you just have to fly through some circles while your ship is spinning crazily.
It's still pretty tough, though.
It's
the last one is super hard. You got to go cut all the way across the screen, and there's like a bunch of shit in the way. There's that enemy that's like leaving the little wire trail behind it.
Oh, yeah.
That one's tough.
And the tough thing as well is if you fail either of those warps, oftentimes you get a wing knocked off.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys feel like the game, by virtue of being a game, tells the story in a way that couldn't be told in, say, a movie, a show, or a book? Does the gameplay itself tell the story in a way?
So, I think that specifically for the kind of story that the game is trying to tell, the game adds a lot. It has all of those cinematographic, like those movie elements where it, the music and the kind of cheesy but emotionally charged character acting. But I think this kind of action movie is really trying to sell you on the, like, this character is a badass. And you being the badass, because you're the one controlling the R-Wing, I think it feels very different than if you just watch, Rambo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because Star Fox doesn't really have any of those like clever lines or anything.
Nope.
Normally the action hero would have.
Yeah. Instead, you're just like this stoic guy, just destroying tons and tons of enemies.
You're like one or two notches above a silent protagonist.
Yeah.
Essentially. Just enough to kind of give you a little bit of a flair.
Uh-huh.
Saying the kind of like vanilla one-liners that literally anybody could say. Yeah. I think that, again, going back to the multiple pathways tells the story. The fact that you have to get better at shooting and better at being a pilot to unlock certain parts of the story are nice. However, I feel like the fact that there are certain parts of it that are scripted, like we were talking about the teammates helping out in certain parts being scripted and not a direct correlation to how and when you help them necessarily. Although I guess you save Fox, or you save Falco and then he shows you behind the waterfall, but that could happen every time you save Falco.
Yes.
Right.
It's not going to be different the second time you save Falco. Like, oh, Falco saved me in this way. He's suddenly going to follow his script.
Yeah.
And I think the overarching story is still just, it is quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, the sort of split paths and the small differences that you see through them are things that would be difficult to tell in a different format. But the core story, I think, is not so difficult or different from something that you could tell in some other form of media.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost argue that the story that Star Fox tells isn't worth making in a movie.
That's
You'd
true.
have to add so much else. Star Fox really pads out the whole story with the gameplay.
Right.
You couldn't get away with writing a novel about Star Fox with the story as presented.
No, I do think, though, that there's the potential for a show, maybe a movie, but more likely a show. But it would be much more comical. It would center more around Peppy trying to rebuild the Star Fox team with, like, a nonsense array of characters. Like, where did you even find, like, Fox, I get it, okay, come on, we're gonna go save your dad. Like, Peppy just, like, very impulsively pulling a team together and then, like, suffering the consequences of that impulsiveness. Like,
I mean, I would totally watch that, but it also wouldn't be the Star Fox story.
No, it wouldn't be.
Would you do it in a way where, like, basically you start with a larger cast and then as the less good options get weeded out, it's just them dying?
Oh, certainly the first season would be like the hazing phase, like like you go through from like 20 candidates, of which Bill and Kat are too, but they quickly are like, you know what, this is a shit show. I'm just gonna get out of here.
The others just die off, or maybe you have like a couple of them that end up switching over to the Star Wolf side.
Maybe, yeah, totally.
Just go to like Diddy Kong Racing and steal some of their characters.
Just pull from all over. F-Zero, yeah. Oh, and I love the idea of like General Pepper?
Pepper.
Yeah.
I love him being just like this bumbling kind of like, I have this whole Lilat army at my disposal, but I'm relying on these four.
He's pretty clearly quite useless as well. Yeah.
I'd love to play with that, like have that character played around with a little bit more. Like every once in a while you're like looking at him on the screen and he's talking to you, you're like, are you in the bath right now? He turns off his camera. And then
there is already a Star Fox anime.
Is there?
Yeah, it's called Star Fox Zero, and apparently it's absolutely terrible.
I'm not really surprised.
Isn't that the name of the game on the Wii U?
Yes.
That's on the Wii U, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the GameCube one was Star Fox Assault.
Assault. Yeah. Assault was okay.
It was fine.
It was fine, yeah. It wasn't 64. Do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, definitely. All right. How does the game translate the 2D arcade shooter experience to 3D?
I think we kind of touched on this a little bit already, but pretty well in the linear segments where you're behind the R-wing and you're going straight forward, and then you have like space to play in, but not so well in all range mode.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason that top-down 2D shooters, like arcade shooters, don't do all range mode, because they could conceivably do it, but the limitations of their screens make it not very fun.
It'd feel like trying to play Asteroid in versus mode.
Right.
I feel like it's just kind of like...
And again, that would be a really big problem without two joysticks.
Yeah.
If
it was a twin shooter...
Right, twin-stick shooter.
Twin-stick shooter, yeah, that might work, but...
But they hadn't invented those yet.
Yeah, and I think it It's telling that the all range mode sections are limited to a couple of bosses and a couple of planets that are basically just fighter deals.
Mm-hmm. Just empty. Like, this is the only thing you're doing here. You don't really have to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
I do think that a big part of the 2D arcade shooter experience is more of a bullet storm or bullet hell, so to speak. I think they try in certain parts of Star Fox 64 to implement that, but it doesn't feel the same because you can just barrel roll for one, and for the most part, reflector shots. And second of all, it's too clustered. I think that the bullet storm doesn't work quite as well when you have to think about 3 dimensions.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. Like, one of the big things with the bullet hell shooter is that, you fill the area with bullets, but there's still like a pathway that you can kind of wind your way through.
But it's much harder to see in 3 dimensions.
But when it's coming at you in 3D, you can't see the pathway.
Especially not with the 3D as it exists in this game.
Yes.
I think it's been done more successfully since, but in this game, no, it doesn't.
I don't think the bullet hell shooter has really made a jump to 3D, and I suspect it won't.
It has made a jump to VR.
That's true. That's true, where you can actually see the depth and everything. Okay, that's a good point.
I haven't tried that in VR yet.
Space Pirate Trainer, really fun.
I gotta try. I haven't played a whole lot of VR, but I do. How could you imagine like a Star Fox VR?
That'd be rad.
It would work. Cool. I mean, there are VR, flight sims already.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Nintendo, get on that.
Nintendo, do it. Oh, that reminds me. There is, not in the 3DS version, but in the Nintendo 64 version, you can actually go into first-person mode.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys ever play it like that?
No.
It's not functional.
I did do a run-through entirely in first person.
Ooh, how was that?
And to be fair, you can't do any all-range mode in first person.
Okay.
That makes sense.
It sucked. There are some points where it's fun to do, but like, you can't barrel roll because the screen literally does flips. The screen crunch is just insane. Like, you can't see enough.
What about the somersaults? I kind of remember it just sort of raising the camera level for a second.
I think it pops you out and then back in.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Kind of like a Metroid Prime when you go into the Morph Ball.
Oh, okay.
But maybe I misremember. No, it must be, because they can't show you behind you.
Exactly, yeah. I was going to say that would have been a pretty significant extra graphical thing for them to do.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the buildings don't have backs.
I think that you're right, because if you could have done that, I probably would have done like a million playthroughs just trying to see what every level looks like going backwards. Sami, do you want to ask the next question?
So, yeah, what are some of your favorite levels or least favorite ones?
Adrien, you want to start?
Yeah. For all that we've said about all range mode, I actually really enjoyed Volse as a kid. That's that level, the defense satellite that is above Easy Venom. That is it's just a fun kind of arena shooter. You've got the Star Wolf team, you're trying to take out these shield generators, and a whole bunch of guys come out, and you have to destroy the center. It's just like, it's a fun little action sequence that I enjoyed doing a lot. Apart from that, for actual levels, I think Sector Y is just an awesome battle level, and also I've talked about it already, but like Beth is fun as well.
Totally.
You just can't compete with "Hit the brakes! I can't stop it!" Gigantic explosion. You get hit plus 50.
And the boss is like a kite that's on the back of the train. Like, what?
I love that you're just blowing up the train as you go by. There's all this stuff, and you're just bombing it and blowing the hell out.
But it's also like dropping rocks on you and stuff like that. It's like, it's kind of funny. You're fighting the boss, so to speak, the entire level, which I think is the only time you really do that in this game. How about you, Sami?
Yeah, I think, again, given, coming back to it now, I'm much less fond of the all-range mode portions. Mm-hmm. But remembering back to when I was a kid, like those fights against, Star Wolf and his team, those were, I think, the most fun fights, because you're like, I think it's because you feel like you're fighting a more equal enemy.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Like it's an actual rival,
right? Flying another ship.
Representation.
Yeah, exactly. They're flying a ship like yours. You're not just trying to destroy something huge or masses of enemies. You're flying against something that seems similar to what you're flying in right now.
It's the only real dogfighting that happens. Yeah. In the game, I think that to go off what you were saying, Adrien, about Boss, just a real quick aside, I was playing through it this time, and I was reminded of how that level always gave me motion sickness as a kid. Because the satellite itself is rotating.
That's right.
And so that really threw me off when I'm trying to position my shots or feel like I'm even moving my ship at all. If you're
in some cases, you'll come up to a tower, and it'll just be like you're flying, but it's not moving at all.
Same distance away.
It's moving away from you.
You got to turn around, and then suddenly they're coming too fast. Yeah. It's a fun level, but it's I was like, whoa, okay, whoa. I think as I played through all levels in preparation of this episode, which means I did all 3 routes, so to speak, and for the most part, all of them, it's hard to choose because they all feel so different and unique in their own ways. They all have so much atmosphere, especially the planetary levels.
Yeah.
Solar, I think when I was a kid was probably my favorite because I love the idea of this giant magma. I mean, it was the sun, but
Solar was a really cool level.
Even though it's got just the singular color tone,
right.
It's still the fact that it's just one level that's like that. It's okay, I can put up with that and kind of appreciate that even. But it comes down to between 2 from this last few sessions. One of them would be Titania. I really enjoy the environment of that. I really there's the final boss of that level. I enjoy the fact that it's not, or the idea that it's maybe not even a planet that Andros really cares too much about. It's just one that you only go to because Slippy's there. And so by that logic, you kind of see a much different take on an enemy planet. The ships all look like they might be different ships, there are a couple that are pretty similar in design to the ones that Andros controls, but there are also some that you only see on that planet. The bioweapon, which is one of the 3, is not just the one of its kind. You drive through the skeletons of dozens of that same species as you're approaching it, which is kind of creepy in its own way. It's pretty tough too. Avoiding the magnetic mines. I died actually a few times just because I was God damn it. And then finally coming up and saving Slippy, that was pretty fun. I like that if you free Slippy first from that arm, suddenly Slippy can help you and scan the enemy because again nobody else can do that for some reason. It's a piece of tech that Slippy kept to himself because he knew it was the only thing that made him worth having around. But then the other one would be Mcleod. I know it's the second level of the game, but I as I was playing through it this time, I remembered I got such a nostalgic trip because that was my favorite level as a kid too, because it was about as far as I could go for a while.
You spent a lot of time there.
I spent a lot of time there, and I got to know it really well. But then there's a lot of really great set pieces in it, and it's the logical second level for a first playthrough because it continues to teach you things and show you when you should use it. Use the brakes here or else these rocks are going to crush you. Use the boost here or else these rocks are going to crush you. Then you have this one tunnel that you fly through that's spinning and it has a bunch of enemies attached to it, and for some reason there's this hopping enemy. Why are you there? I don't get it, but it's fun. It's cheesy and it's fun.
Interestingly, Shigeru Miyamoto actually says that he worked in terms of level design, he worked primarily on Corneria and Mcleod because those were the first 2 levels that you would play. Specifically in that he wanted them to be really good.
Yeah, oh my god, he's so good.
What's funny about that level though is coming back to it now, and especially having played Kerbal Space Program, asteroid fields don't work like that.
No,
not at all.
Which, totally fine from a gameplay perspective, and that's what makes it interesting and exciting is having all these rocks that are crushing together, and you have to try to avoid where they're coming together, but just funny to look at it and go, this is unrealistic. This is the one thing that
was the line.
All this other stuff,
a anthropomorphic fox flying a spaceship.
Totally fine.
Put up with it.
Hyperdrive,
Yeah, not a problem, but
giant space monkey.
but
who's actually a
asteroids that
living
are
brain.
like flying into each other in an asteroid field, not having that.
You guys have a favorite boss separate from the level?
I mean, the Meteor boss is actually pretty great.
Yeah, the Meteor boss
That's
is
another
great.
part of it. It turns around and you have to
Yeah,
shoot
he's
from
got
both
that like,
sides.
spinning thing on the back. You have to shoot the back off. Like, it's actually a decently difficult boss. Like,
And good phases that are all very distinct from each other.
Yeah, and then like again, you have to focus on your aim. If you're not hitting it on target, it's gonna shoot you back.
Also, that one is the one that also swings at you, right? I'm pretty sure it is. Like, it has a phase where he's like
There's a couple-
swinging it, like long arm that like swings at you at the
There's
end,
a
like the last
couple-
phase, I think.
I don't remember.
I don't remember that actually.
I feel like I remember
I
that.
took it down pretty quickly this time.
It was it was at least one of the space level bosses.
Yeah, there's a couple in the space levels. There's
But,
the
you
one
know,
in
again,
Sector X.
sillier thing, right? That
Yeah.
you're fighting something in space, and its final phase of trying to beat you is to punch you.
Right.
There's the boss in Sector X, which I wrestled with this the entire time, but that ended up being my favorite for a couple of reasons. And that one has the arms. That's the one that slaps.
Oh, okay. It was
Slightly
Sector
down.
X. Okay.
There's also the boss in Area 8, which is the flying saucer that has the 3 whips that come off of it.
Area 6.
Area 6, sorry. I was
With the energy balls. So, I actually don't like that boss very much. You spend a lot of time trying to get to its weak point.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the butt. Like, you have to shoot the energy balls, and then it's like, instead of showing you my weak point, I'm just going to shoot a giant laser at you. It's like, and then more energy balls. It's like, when will you let me kill you?
What would you say that Medio is?
I think so.
Is your favorite? All right, how about you, Adrian? We got your least favorite.
Yeah. I might have to go with the boss in Solar. For kind of the same reasons that you mentioned, where it's just like it's this giant magma thing, and you're like constantly taking damage, and like it's just a really cool set piece boss. I think feels fun. You can blow up everything.
Take its arms off, and it starts like bleeding magma, blood, or whatever.
Yeah. Another boss that I don't like is the Boss of Aquas.
I actually really like that one. But
where it's so hard to, like, especially once it starts shooting those projectiles absolutely everywhere, it is so hard to get that last hit on the eye.
Oh yeah, because they just keep blocking it. You're like, God damn it! I only have one attack that will do anything to you.
And like, if you have hyper lasers, you can do the thing where you like shoot the torpedo first, and then once it gets really close, you immediately break down the thing that's protecting the eye with your hyper lasers. If you don't have hyper lasers, that boss is
just a pain in the ass.
Huge pain in the ass.
The game really does kind of expect you to have and keep the hyper lasers, especially on the higher routes.
Yeah,
like
that's actually something I think is worth talking about. Is like, you really need hyper lasers all the time.
Yeah.
It's not really acceptable to have the lower tiers of lasers. You won't really be able to do a lot of parts of the game.
So real quick, that boss in Sector X is my favorite because of 2 reasons. I think it's a really fun. It's a funny, quirky idea to have this robot trying to smack you. It leads into my other favorite level, and I really like the character of the robot. It's the only enemy that you fight that's actually a robot. That's like, or a boss anyway, that you fight that's like actually a robot, unless you fight the robot Andros, but I don't think that really counts.
No.
But he comes in, he's like, "Are you my creator? Where is my like?" You kind of feel bad for this thing because you feel like it just got born. In fact, you see it being assembled throughout the level.
Yeah.
And then like it's coming into existence. It's kind of confused and maybe even a little infuriated at its own existence. And like suddenly you have to take it down.
Do you think it's a King Kong reference to like smacking down helicopters around it?
Oh, maybe. Like just like this very slow sweeping. Damn, I didn't even think about that. This game is full of references.
Yeah, seriously.
Back to your point about the hyper lasers though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, losing your wing is the absolute worst thing in this game.
Because then you have to repair your wing before you can even start getting your double lasers back.
Right.
And it knocks you down all the way from hyper laser if you had it to single lasers. So it's just
And I mean, you do, with hyper lasers, you do a lot of damage to enemies. There are a lot of early bosses that will die in a second or two to hyper lasers if you are like decent at button mashing. I'm like not amazing, but like the basic boss on Corneria will die in one pass easily with hyper lasers.
It's one of the big problems I have with the game. If you take the high route when you're in Venom and you're in the hallway, if you die fighting Andros and you start in those hallways with one laser, there's only one path that you can take that will give you hyper lasers back.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of trial and error to figure out what that path was.
Yeah.
And not to mention, but not that I wouldn't have had as many tries as it would have taken to figure that out anyway, because again, I kept dying at that boss.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's actually a path that'll give you green lasers and a 1-up. So if you really want to do Andros with green lasers, you can have as many tries as you want.
Perpetually, yeah. It was so interesting to see that, because I think there's only a few times that you actually see the icon that you can collect.
Yeah.
It's just like an R-wing that's like spinning there. Like,
Yeah.
Did you guys ever hear a rumor? Like, when I was a kid, we talk a lot about the rumors that we heard about the games on the school grounds in these episodes. When I was a kid, people were saying if you collect enough double laser tokens, you can get like a third double laser that's like purple, and it's like even stronger.
I vaguely remember that. I think my version of it was red lasers.
Red lasers.
That's interesting because I didn't know anybody else who played that game. It was literally my friend who had the N64 and me, and that was it. I literally knew nobody else.
Did you ever try to talk to people about it? Like, have you played Star Fox?
No, interestingly, I don't think I really talked about video games to anybody until Pokemon became a big thing, and then even that was just like a singular thing, and then it really didn't get to anything other than that until probably I was a few years later when I got like a GameCube and started playing Pikmin.
Oh, I want to do a Pikmin episode, by the way. But this kind of pulling back to an earlier question, your first question about the 2D arcade shooter. I think a big part of those is also different types of power-ups. Like you could get like missile arms or like a machine gun. How would you feel like that would work in Star Fox? Like, did you ever wish you could see like options?
I wouldn't be surprised if they tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I always wanted there to be stuff like that in the game, and now that I am a game designer, I feel like the game probably didn't need it. Like, Star Fox is a very elegant game in terms of what it provides the player. The weapons are very straightforward. They are already like absolutely devastating if employed properly. I'm not sure the gameplay needs it, and I'm not sure sure you could like introduce an elemental system or something, and you could have like fire lasers that you use against the ice boss or whatever, but I don't think it would have really added much to the game.
I think the other thing is that if you added, like a whole plethora of different weapons to the game, you would have had so much more happening on screen at once. You would have had a lot more like pickups and power-ups and things that you would have to be focusing on trying to get, and they're there and they're really important, but they're not omnipresent and they're not distracting, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, the game really does provide a nice focus when there is a laser power-up or a bomb power-up on screen.
I think that it's nice. It would be nice to have like slightly different options. Like say instead of a double shot that's super powerful, maybe you could have a triple shot that's a little wider, but that does slightly less damage than your regular hyper laser. So you can take down like swarms a little bit easier.
I think it also would have needed a slightly different control scheme, right? Because one of the key control differences between Star Fox and those 2D bullet hell shooters is that in those bullet hell shooters, generally you held down the button and your guns just fired, right? Which is not the case in Star Fox. And so designing different weapons would probably require designing a very different control scheme in terms of firing your weapons. And
that's true.
Might not have allowed for your torpedo thing or whatever. Especially with like limited buttons on the N64 controller.
I feel like the extra weapons is like so obvious that I've got to agree with you. They must have tried it at some point.
Yeah, that does make sense to me, that the way that you put it especially.
Yeah, I think that they really did cut it down to what was necessary. The only time that they provide you with alternative weapons is when you're in a completely different vehicle.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Which, to segue into that, I think is a good time. We've talked a little bit about the Landmaster. One more thing that I would want to say about that, and then if you guys have anything to add, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Has it ever felt in a Landmaster scenario like you really needed to be in the Landmaster for that level, like
No.
story-wise?
No.
Was there any real point to that?
No, not at all.
If anything, it always felt like more of a hindrance to me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because now all of a sudden, instead of moving in 3 dimensions like you're used to, you're moving in 2.
Mm-hmm. It would have been different if, because like, there's a reason for the submarine. You have to go underwater, you have to fight a bunch of enemies underwater, and you have to fight a bioweapon underwater.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if in one of the Landmasters levels, if you had to go through like a tunnel or something,
or just in an in some sort of area where you couldn't just easily take the R-Wing.
Yeah.
Or there's like a bunch of floating rocks or something. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
Like,
And the other thing is that the Landmaster didn't feel any more powerful than the R-Wing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you could maybe imagine like, oh, we need some heavy artillery, so we're going to bring the Landmaster because the R-Wing doesn't have the firepower to deal with this, but it doesn't feel that way.
Its gun does have a really nice sound to firing it. You really feel like
It has a
it's
good
got
sound, but I actually really don't like the graphics for it.
Yeah, the graphics
just a little
are good.
oval green.
Yeah.
Just that like boom, 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 boom.
It is satisfying when you get like a good kill with it, like, but maybe mostly because it's that much harder to aim with.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass to aim. It has no upgrades for some reason.
Yeah, that was a missed
always
opportunity.
Felt really strange to me, and also it fires slowly.
Yeah.
Like, it might be slightly stronger than your normal single, but like,
But you can fire it so much less often.
but it's so frustrating to be like stuck in that thing and then see your whole team flying by doing a bunch of crazy cool shit.
I gotta say though, it looks rad.
It does look rad.
It also has really good, like in audio. Going back to that, the sound of the treads is pretty satisfying as well.
They do a lot of things audio wise to make you really feel like you're, again, the sound designer for this game just like really pull out all the stops.
Yeah, I also really, now we're mentioning like the Landmaster, we really need to bring it. At the end of the levels, it just like boosts off all the way up to the
it just flies up.
Suddenly you can do that.
And like in Macbeth, at least, it seems like the Great Foxes come in really low to allow you to do that. But then on Titania, like the Great Fox is in the upper atmosphere, just like, fuck this, I'm out. Just flies up. It's like, why can't I do that?
Speaking of the Great Fox, don't you ever wish that you could have the Great Fox come in and just blast the crap out of one of your bosses?
It does in Area 6.
I know, but
a little bit,
but a little bit more often, right? Like you're just like,
often.
we have this giant ship with really big laser guns on the front. Why am I fighting this giant enemy?
Right.
Why did you wait till Area 6? Like,
Right.
You could have made this whole like journey a breeze. I mean, gameplay wise, I get that. Like,
also, we apparently have infinite bombs on the Great Fox and can target pretty well where they go.
Mm-hmm.
Could we just like do that?
Or at least send
Just
supplies
bomb
more
venom.
often.
Yeah.
Like, send me supplies more than 3 times in my entire adventure.
That's true. Yeah, they come so rarely, and you're like, okay, why are we bothering?
And
Why
you have
not
to answer the phone call too.
Right.
And don't you get bombs from other places anyway? So
Yes.
like, why am I getting them from the ship in this situation?
Yeah.
Why not just have it be part of the level?
Like, just to kind of justify, again, Grey
Yeah.
Fox's existence
Right.
Yeah.
as more than just a carrier.
I mean, they could have designed it as only a carrier with no weapons, and that would have been fine.
Yeah.
You know?
But you canonically give it these tools that it's not using.
Yeah.
And that again, it kind of adds to that 80s silliness.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like,
yeah.
in that way, like, yeah, okay, it adds to it. But it is still frustrating, I think.
I mean, it's definitely a plot hole, but it's one that's very clearly kind of intended.
Yeah. So, like, yeah.
It's like, why aren't we using the Great Fox? It's like, well, we have to wait for the finale to do that. We can't just use the giant lasers right away.
It does kind of give that last run on Area 6, like, a very epic feel.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, yeah, Rob, okay, whatever. He's like, yeah, we're providing support. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. The lasers coming. It's like,
Where the fuck is that? What the shit?
just like takes
Why
out-
am I here in the first place?
takes out an entire battleship. It's like, oh, that's what the Great Fox can do. And you don't really think it's like,
It's just
were
been
you? It's
sitting
just
back
like,
because it
that's so
felt like it would be
cool.
unfair to the enemy.
It's just like, I don't want to. I mean, we were already mowing through everybody with 4 planes. Like, I don't want to hurt Andros's feelings.
Turns out Fox is just like so cocky that he won't even let them grapefruit.
He's like, look, like your dad used it all the time. Well, I'm not my dad. All right, I'm better.
It's like that guy on that, Warhammer tank where he's like, drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword.
We should talk a little bit about Aquas, though. A little bit more about the submarine. I remember having just the toughest time with that level every time. Not just because of the boss. Yeah, the boss is ridiculously hard. But then there's that part where you need the torpedoes to light the way.
Mm-hmm.
That was always good. That level has always done a really good job of making me feel claustrophobic.
Mm-hmm. It's very dark.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see stuff. The game is laggy as hell.
That's true. There's so much going on there.
There's a lot going on. Ironically, the lag gives you that like slightly slow-mo feel of being underwater.
That's true.
Which may be why they didn't fix it. Interestingly, they apparently intended on there being more underwater levels, but Miyamoto felt that it impacted the game's pacing too much. The level was so slow.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. There were parts of my childhood where I kind of wish there were more things to do with the submarine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe and I've had dreams about being in the Star Fox submarine that were super scary but super cool at the same time. But yeah, I think that if they had, especially if you had to do it twice in one playthrough, I think that would be too much.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have any thoughts on that level at all? No.
No, not really. I don't think I even played it, actually.
It is really weird that you have infinite torpedoes. Like, you don't have bombs, you have torpedoes instead. You don't have a charge shot, you have torpedoes instead. And it's like, you can have multi-lasers, but you just use torpedoes for the most part.
Why would you?
and there are parts in the level where you should use your lasers because the torpedoes actually have horrible DPS.
Mm-hmm.
Like at that point where you're trying to reveal the eye, like if you're using the torpedoes to reveal the eye, it's going to be a huge pain in the ass on the boss to actually hit it again. But if you use your guns, then you're fine. It's definitely it's a unique level. I'm glad there's only one of them. It is cool to return because the designs are really awesome and it's got some really great atmosphere.
Yeah. On that note, I really enjoyed just the little hints of lore that happen in almost every level. But especially that one where you just have this sunken city. What's the deal with that? We're never going to find out.
Right.
It's just kind of left to the question.
They thought it was cool. That's why
they thought it was cool.
I was going to say, I think a lot of it isn't necessarily even hints of lore. It's just here's an interesting, environment that we wanted to create. So go and fight things in it.
Good set pieces.
Yeah.
And
like the temple at the end on Venom, that you fly into.
Yes.
Who built that? Why?
Why? Yeah.
Does it matter?
Why does it have
Not
these
really.
Bars coming out of the hallway?
Because it looked cool. That's
because it looked cool.
And I don't think that there's trying to. It's one of those situations where I think trying to justify or create a story around it would actually kind of detract from the game because it would be so unbelievable.
Yeah.
Whereas you just take it for what it is, a cool set piece, and enjoy it.
It's the Fast and Furious of video games. Because in those movies, those set pieces are awesome. If you really try to apply any kind of logic to the plot of how they got there, you're like, okay, it starts to fall apart. You don't have to worry about that at all with Star Fox. You just sort of go for it.
I mean, it's even the first level with Corneria, right? The whole narration before is that Andros leveled Corneria 5 years ago.
Right.
And now he's invaded again, and there's a whole bunch of skyscrapers that are on fire, but recently damaged, and apparently you've completely rebuilt an entire planet in a year or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think about it.
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it.
Just like the Fast and Furious. I love the Fast and Furious movies. I'll say. I love not thinking about it.
Look at the pretty explosions. Don't think too much.
Don't think too much. There's no time to think. You gotta move. You gotta duck and weave. There were definitely some parts of the game where I felt like did you guys ever use the tilting too much, from side to side, other than to do a barrel roll?
Yeah, constantly.
Yeah, it's fun. Not only is it fun, but it's useful.
No, yeah.
I definitely felt cool whenever I would thread the needle vertically. And then it also helped aiming sometimes, like to have the twin lasers stacked vertically instead of horizontally.
Yeah, it also let you move side to side a little bit faster, which is nice sometimes. Especially in all range mode, I use the tilting constantly.
With a break too.
If you just need to turn around.
Sync and line up a shot.
Yeah, there's actually no reason to do like the Immelman turnaround thing.
It takes more time. Yeah, if you do it that way. Yeah. It's cool though, cinematically.
Oh, yeah. Break OP.
Do you want to move into the next question?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Okay. How does the game's camera work help contribute to its cinematic feel?
I feel like we've sort of covered this, but it's good to get a little bit deeper, I think is good. Third person, over the shoulder, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's great for this game. Or from behind, yeah. I think it works really well. Again, there's no real parts where the camera is doing anything spectacular for any one moment.
Mm-hmm. But it never does anything horribly wrong.
Right. It does its job.
Which is great.
Very well.
Yeah. Compared to some other N64 games that I won't necessarily name.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything seems to fit on the screen pretty well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in third person, at least. The all-range mode, I think, is the one time where it doesn't quite...
It feels claustrophobic a little bit.
Well, yeah, you get some screen crunch. You can't see everything on screen. Things will just, hit you out of nowhere. Yeah. But when you are on that linear area, everything is just laid out very nicely so that the basic camera just works.
Except for, again, I'll go back to, I mentioned it already, those places where you have to, dodge something or select left or right, and you get really close to the edge of the screen, and those are the only places where I really wish that the camera would just pan over to the side a little bit or move over a little bit.
The Sector 6 or Area 6 boss with the laser, you have to get all the way up in that corner if you want to avoid it. There's no other way.
Yeah, I think also another instance where you have some fun camera work is in the I can't say this word today.
Cinematic?
Yes, thank you. And the cinematics going into and out of the levels. There's some great spots, after you beat Andros, and just the camera switches out, and you just see the R-Wing come straight up out of Andros's lair as everything is blowing up and just goes all the way up into space. The camera switches up as, Fox kind of comes up and rejoins his formation. Yeah. I really like that sequence.
You know what that's a throwback to as well, right?
I don't.
Second Death Star: Return of the Jedi
when he's coming back out.
When they come out of it explodes and then they fly out of the and the insides of the second Death Star.
That's so cool.
Just steal some camera work.
Yeah, exactly. But it works really well. It's a great shot. So
borrowed. Final question for you guys: what is your favorite way to play Star Fox? Your favorite route?
So I think the kind of developer intended way to play the game is to go for kind of a high score. And we saw a high score run from, I think it was the 2014 GDQ charity drive, where we saw a guy get I think it's 16,000 score or something absolutely preposterous. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's kind of supposed to be the objective, but there are other ways to play the game. People speedrun the game despite the game kind of being an auto-scroller. Mm-hmm. There are ways to get through the levels faster. And of course, there's kind of what we were talking about, where it's just hey, let's see what happens when I go through the game in this particular way. That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I haven't played it enough really to say that I have a favorite route or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely still be approaching it from I just want to see what's in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I'm not sure it's something that I will really return to very much.
Mm-hmm.
There's the struggles with the controls and the limited sort of field of view and the way that these kinds of games have evolved since then. I don't have enough nostalgia for this game, I think, to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the Joy-Con controls, if you play it on the Switch, is actually pretty good. I think better than the original. Having just played through all routes, played through every level, I think my preferred route is actually the lower route. I would consistently get the highest victory on each level, but then intentionally choose going the lower route just because I think the levels are a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. So I feel like if I was to do a canonical like run through, it would be the hard route. But like, and I really do like Sector Y. It's a fun area, but Aquas is Zonus is Sector Z is Area 6 is fun because there's a bunch of stuff that comes towards you, but that's okay. And then Venom is just I much prefer easy Venom.
It's much more fun.
There's just a lot more going on. There's that like crazy temple guardian who like runs away from you.
What is with that guy?
I don't know.
He doesn't try to fight you. Why are you even going in that temple? It's like,
why are you killing him?
Why are you killing him? Like, you're in his home.
They're like in the level. They're like talking about tracking like an energy signature or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you get to that point where the temple, and they're like, "What is that?" Fox is like, "I'm gonna go in there alone and take care of it," and then afterwards, you're just outside again.
Right.
You could have gone over the temple.
Yeah.
Avoided all that bullshit.
Just as a side note, I really like the fact that you get to the end of the temple after you kill the guy. Like it can take a minute, it can take 5 minutes, but after you kill him, then you get to the end of the temple.
Like the temple is alive.
Right.
I also like how he goes, "I'm going in alone," and nobody says anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Why though? We'll meet you on the other side because it's easier.
It's like, shh, he's just being Fox. Let him do his thing.
That's the part where I was like, if you throw me in a landmaster and put me into that, like, okay, have a whole level be a temple like that.
That would be really awesome.
That would be pretty cool.
Anyway, so we should talk about that more, but I wanted to provide my answer. So I also like a lot of chunks of the easy route, but I don't really care for what's it called? I don't really care for Ficina or Sector X as levels. Sector X is just kind of a bruising level. You get mashed around a lot. And so because of that, I actually like doing like Corneria, Meteo, Katina, Solar, Macbeth, 2 Bullseye, 2 Easy Venom as like my favorite particular way to go through the level, where you kind of like jog over into the midsection. But like I said, if I were to just sit down and play Star Fox again, I'd probably do the hard route just because that's like what I know best.
It's a point of pride too, I think. Like,
Yeah,
I can do it.
Yeah. I do think Titania is a very interesting level, and I'd be willing to go through Sector X in order to do it. I would probably just go around Ficina because it's boring.
Fushima always gives me Empire Strikes Back vibes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That first scene. Or the first section of it, really.
Yeah, also, if I'm going to Bullseye, I don't want to kill the Star Wolf team before I get there. Because, like, that's one of the things that makes Bullseye fun, is that there's the Star Wolf team and everything else going on.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not there, it's, like, a pretty boring level.
You mean I get to fight my rival and get motion sickness?
It's like killing them in Hoth kind of defeats the point.
It does a little bit. Any final thoughts on that? Well, in that case, time to roll credits, I think. This has been a really fun time.
Mm-hmm.
We've been recording here for a good hour and 45 minutes here. Hour and 40 minutes. And
Wow.
Yeah, we'll probably cut a little bit out of that by the time everyone listens to it. But
I mean, that's not very bad, considering the fact that you probably could have beaten the game.
That is exactly what I was
several
going to say.
times.
Probably once. Probably it's like an hour.
Those listening at home, comment how many times you beat the game while you listen to us talk about the game. All right. Well, thank you, Sami. Thank you, Adrien, for being on this. Thank you, McKenna, for your contributions. Those were great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed listening to us, please like, follow, and subscribe for more on whatever platform you're finding us on. And in the meantime, stay nerdy.
All right, then we keep the mic on and do the after. Sorry, because we drink.
It's still
Oh no.
Awesome. So,
right.
So, who's Fox's mom?
Who's Fox's mom?
I think it might be related to Crystal's mom.
Mm-hmm.
oh god.
Problematic. That relationship's not meant to last, though.
I do have to say, I'm sorry, but I have to go back to it. I did actually genuinely like Star Fox Adventure. I did like that game.
I do too. I just not as a Star Fox game.
If I came back to it now, I'm pretty sure I would have a very different opinion of it.
Dude, it was my first Star Fox game, and even I, at like age 10, was like, what the shit is this?
You know,
It was bad.
I think one of the things that was most annoying about one of the things that like badly derailed the game was actually its pacing. Because
That's true.
you did a fucking like giant thing every time you picked up an item or opened a chest.
Yeah, Legend of Zelda.
It was that, except for anything.
That's true.
Like, Link does that for major items.
Mhm.
And even then it's annoying when you do it and you get a fucking map.
That's why I skipped the maps. Right now at this time.
But there was something fun about the combat with the staff.
Yeah,
I think that was...
The combat was fine.
It was good.
Honestly, the R-Wing sections weren't terrible.
No.
They weren't great.
They
They
weren't
were shoehorned.
And there were very few of them.
Yeah, I think
and they
there
were
were like
short.
3 or 4.
They didn't really have bosses either. You just did it to get to the next area.
Yeah.
Until the last one with Andros.
Oh yeah, but
yeah.
that was again shoehorned. Like,
Yeah.
It didn't start life as a Star Fox game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was conceived as an entirely new IP.
Oh,
and then
they probably should have kept it that way.
I know, probably. It probably would have sold fewer copies. It would have been a more sound game.
It's interesting, though, because I actually enjoyed it more than Star Fox Assault.
Really? I actually
Yeah.
enjoy Star
I
Fox
thought-
Assault more.
I thought Star Fox Assault was really boring.
I thought it was okay. Although I haven't played it since it first came out. When
But
it
I
first
think
came
it's
out,
also because I had, at that point, played both Rogue Squadron 2 and Rogue Squadron 3.
Mm.
And those were great
Yeah.
space games.
Yeah.
If you're going to compare it, yeah.
Yeah, I do think that Assault was like a solid 5 for me. Whereas,
Out
like,
of 10?
okay, yeah, like 5 out of 10. And it's like, okay, you're kind of back to form, so that's nice. But I sat down, and in like 3 hours, I beat the game, and I never came back to it,
Yeah.
except to play multiplayer.
Well, and all of the, like, land battle where you're, like, running around
I didn't like
were
that.
really bad.
Yeah.
I enjoyed them at the time, but looking back, I was
I didn't even like them at the time, and I wasn't that discerning a gamer at that point in like
yeah,
gaming.
I felt
career.
that like they really killed the pacing.
Mm-hmm.
And even worse, oh god, like in some cases, like you'd be like, oh, in order to beat this level, I have to find the last enemy. Where the fuck are they?
Yeah. Because the thing is, I rented that game. I never bought it. I rented it, and I rented it, and I played it for whatever amount of time I had available during the rental period, and then I don't think I even played it for the whole rental period. Returned it.
Did you beat it?
No.
No.
No, I was too bored with it.
I really enjoyed it. I think the thing that I enjoyed most about it was the lore aspect. Like, it actually tried to give you kind of a comprehensive canon story, which, again, as much as I was, like,
Talking
cherishing
about how
the
it
fact
kind of doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter in the 64 and how I really like that for 64. I did kind of like seeing things like Pigma coming back and becoming like this. The Aperoids, I think, are the main enemy in Assault, and he becomes like this Aperoid giant mecha human Akira kind of thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of fun. I really enjoyed some of the level designs. I thought they were pretty decent, and some of the camera work in that one was really good. But
Yeah, the level where you are, where there's the giant fleet battle, that definitely took me back to like Sector Y and Area 6, and it was like, okay, this particular level at the very least, they've managed to correctly invoke what Star Fox means to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just realized actually what the real problem was with Star Fox Assault for me.
What?
It wasn't Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because that game was great.
I mean, you're not wrong.
That's true. Yeah.
And it had the like vehicle portions, it had the infantry portions, and all of it was just better than it was in Star Fox Assault.
See, I didn't play that at the time. So,
I know.
Yeah,
I
that's
played it a lot.
I didn't have that frame of reference.
Yeah,
Well, what did you think about them replacing Slippy with Crystal?
I mean,
Wasn't Slippy
Anything's
still
better
in
than
it?
Slippy.
I was
Yeah,
gonna,
Slippy was still in it.
Yeah,
but
Slippy
but he
not as
wasn't
a-
in the main.
Well, no, he was in the Great Fox instead.
Right, he
yeah,
wasn't in the
okay.
main like quartet.
Yeah, he wasn't in R1.
Honestly, I appreciate that.
Me too.
I mean, we talked about how there weren't enough female characters,
Yeah.
first of all, and then second of all,
Fucking Slippy,
yeah.
And his thing is data analysis, and he should be in the freaking
Right.
Great
Great
Fox
Fox.
doing that and not flying a ship when he's really bad at it.
So that when he dies, which he will, like
I like
dies
the
and
fact that
crashes.
a woman who's grown up in a primitive society can
With-
fly an R-wing better than Slippy.
Like, she starts off Star Fox Adventure flying a dragon. So I guess
Yeah,
there's a little bit
That
of
is
that.
true. So she has some practice there. That is not to say that women can't fly.
No, but
women in the Star Fox universe, which this is the problem that we're hinting at.
yeah,
Like,
there aren't enough of them.
actually, no. The two
They
women
really
that fly in the Star Fox universe are
very competent.
very competent.
Yes, but
but
also
women-
extremely sexualized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially
yes,
Crystal.
Fox
Holy crap.
titties.
Fox titties.
Holy crap! Crystal's outfit in
Like, goddamn.
Adventure, like,
Yes.
you know, whatever, 13-year-old me.
We might have to put an age warning on this post.
Anyway, so I was doing a bit more flipping back. Apparently there was never a Star Fox anime, so I'm going to correct myself here.
Okay.
Never a Star Fox anime, but Nintendo and Netflix were working on a completely puppeteered show of Star Fox.
I would watch that 10 times.
That
easy.
sounds hilarious.
Yeah, oh my
Dude,
god.
look at
We're going to
this.
have to link to these pictures
Oh,
that
God,
McKenna's showing
no.
us. I would watch the shit out of that.
I have to say,
Yeah, unfortunately they canceled it after Netflix had a leak of the images, and they were like, "Oh, nope, we're not doing this."
Oh, god damn it,
I mean,
Netflix.
honestly, this shit looks fucking hilarious.
The puppets were the right choice.
100%, because we're harkening back to the Thunderbirds. We're harkening back to those derpy marionettes who were like going around and like saving people in giant spacecrafts. So, like, honestly, I'm so sad. They were partnering with College Humor for this
Oh my
as
god.
well. So it was exceptionally.
That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you see any parallels here?
yes.
Mr. No, that's not actually. That's not Thunderbirds,
Yeah.
but
Oh, okay.
this is like a puppeteered Miyamoto sketch that College Humor did.
Oh man.
So.